Hi, welcome back to a very special edition of the Falling Apart video series. Today we're going to go a little bit out of order, and we're going to do part 7 this week, and we will do part 6 next week. And for reasons that should be made clear momentarily. The album is out today. It is the long anticipated day we have been so excited for. Today also marks 5 years of continuous sobriety for me. 5 years of abstinence from alcohol and other mood and mind altering substances. So even though the song that I'm going to play for you today was written a little bit after the song that I am going to play for you next week, I think you will see why in a moment. My sobriety began on July 14th, 2015. July 13th, 2015 was the day I took my last drink. It was in this room. I had bought a gallon of vodka a few days before, and I consumed what was left of it early that day, and that evening I overdosed on tricyclic antidepressants, which my psychiatrist at the time told me would be fatal. And I became very ill and just sort of laid here in this room in my failure. And my father's girlfriend at the time, the woman who is now his wife, who is a nurse, was sent to check on me because no one in my family could bear to face what they might discover if they were the one to enter the room. And I pretended to be asleep, and she found me supposedly unconscious next to this empty bottle of pills, and an ambulance was called, and I was taken to the emergency room. And that was the 5th time in my life that I had made an attempt to end my life. I sincerely hope that it is the last time. So I was taken to the emergency room, and I guess I maybe caught a few hours sleep, and I woke up the following day, 5 years ago today, July 14th, 2015, and was transferred from the ER to the ICU. From ICU, I was transferred to telemetry, and from telemetry, I was sent to a psychiatric unit. And I haven't had a drink or a drug since then. In that psychiatric unit, I came to the realization that what I had been told about myself by the people in 12-step meetings that I had attended was true. I came to the realization that I had been ill spiritually. I always had I had such a problem being me. From a very young age, I received the message on a consistent basis that who I was in one way or another inappropriate or unacceptable. On a nearly daily basis for a lot of years. and I internalized that, and I came to see myself as unlikable and unlovable and unworthy of love or affection or good things happening to me. And from the time I was 14 until I was 27 when I got sober, suicide was a near constant idea in my brain. And I made 5 attempts. So another thing that I want to do a little bit differently for this video is I want to play the song first, and I'll talk about it after. The song is called Your Last Chance. And just as a little bit of a primer before I play it, and then we'll break it down a little bit further after that, the way I lived my life was very much, I consistently painted myself into corners. Socially, academically, financially, you know, I really felt that I was deserving of this hardship. I felt like life was supposed to be miserable and unpleasant for me, based on these messages that I received as a child from a lot of different sources about the unacceptability or the inappropriateness of me expressing myself in uninhibited forms. And I wasn't consciously aware of this at the time. This is my understanding looking back on it. You know, I painted myself into these corners, and you know, under the impression, under the directive or the motivation or the understanding or the perception that life for me was supposed to be miserable and difficult. And so I was the beneficiary of a lot of, this is your last chance, you know. And at this point in my life, you know, this is the summer of 2008 when I wrote this song. I had just transferred to I just transferred to a new school off of the strength of some previous academic success while I was living at home and going to school locally. And I had a rough semester because I immediately fell back into these old patterns. And I sort of, you know, I had to convince them to let me come back. And it was just a continuation of this pattern. And, you know, when you live your life like that, you sort of wonder, where's the end of the line? You know, when is the last time someone's going to give me a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance? And so that was that's the behind the title of the song, Your Last Chance, is very much how I was feeling about myself and my life and my prospects for any kind of success or happiness moving forward. I perpetually felt like I was this was the last shot that I was going to get to take. So I'll play the song for you. We'll get a little bit into the meaning behind some of what I'm saying in it, and we'll get into a little bit better context of the last 5 years. But this is your last chance. Pack your smile up in your suitcase. It will be your last defense. mesmerized, and she doesn't have the first clue. This is the last you'll see of none of them has any clue. This is the last they'll see of How sad it is, and yet so true. This is the last they'll see So, when I wrote that song, I wrote it over the course of 2 days. The first verse I wrote in the evening. I was alone in my bedroom, and my bedroom in the house at the time was right above the kitchen. And I was listening to my family downstairs eating dinner and enjoying themselves. And, my family is full of very funny people. Both of my parents and all of my siblings are all very funny people. And, we generally have a pretty good time and make each other laugh a lot when we get together. And I felt so far removed from that. I think I've talked in previous videos about my issues with food and with diet, and from a very young age, I didn't feel a part of my family because I had this very different relationship with food than anyone else at the table. And I just felt so uncomfortable, and I stopped being a part of it. I stopped eating meals with my family except under extenuating circumstances. If I didn't have to, I didn't, because it was so uncomfortable for me. And I'm sure I've talked in previous videos about difficulties I've had socially, especially at a very young age in elementary and middle school. So I would feel this alienation at school all day, and I would come home and I would feel this alienation from my family, and it was getting harder and harder to be me. It was getting harder and harder to live the way I was living and find any kind of relief or joy or solace or compassion or understanding for myself, from myself, and a lot of times from other people as well, which had a lot to do with me not telling other people what's going on in my internal world. can't really expect understanding from people if I don't clue them in, which is not something I had an appreciation for until I got sober. And so I wrote that first verse in my room that night while I was listening to my family eat dinner. And that, that the you in that verse, that none of them has any clue. The them in that verse is my family. And the next day I went to work, and I'm, riding in the cab of the trash truck, either on the way to or back from dumping the trash truck. And I'm thinking, I went to open mics a lot at the time, and open mics are weird. They're very cool and they're very weird. And you see the same people a lot, week after week. If you go regularly, you also see people show up once and then never see them again, And the line, make sure your shoes are tied tight for the walk to your electric chair is sort of me talking to myself, saying, like, don't fuck this up. If you are, at that point in my life, I had never attempted suicide. And I was saying to myself, if you are going to do this, don't fucking trip on your way to the electric chair. Do it. If you're going to do it right. Because it's really embarrassing. It's very embarrassing to, well, in one sense it is. In another sense, it's a lot of other things. It's very sad, and it's very, there's a lot of relief when you survive a suicide attempt. There's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of frustration, degradation, humiliation. But the audience in that respect, the people who watch the fucking execution are not at all concerned that this is the last they're going to see of this person being executed. And it was kind of a metaphor for my experience at open mics, which was like, who gives a shit if this is the last time I'm on this stage? None of these people are gonna. And I'm sure, some of them did. So I'm sure one or two people who were a part of that community looked forward to seeing me week after week and were interested in what I was going to do. And but when you're in that space of alienation, you don't have there's no faith in that. And then I wrote the second and third verse while I was sitting in my head sitting in the cab of this trash truck. And I had this crush on the friend of a young lady who a friend of mine had a crush on. And they were both servers at this restaurant in South Philly where we would go and we would drink pitchers of margaritas pretty much for free. It was a nice way to spend an evening. And, she wasn't, this was not a requited crush or interest, and so that was just kind of, a dig at my own romantic history, which was thoroughly unsuccessful, due mainly to my inability to communicate with another human being what my emotional state was at any given time, or be available to another person, and just terrified of people, especially terrified of females, especially terrified of females that I found attractive and wanted to like me. So, that's just it. I was just twisting the knife in myself of saying, like, this girl doesn't care either. If she never sees you again, it won't make any difference to her. I don't know whether or not that's true. I do know that she didn't crush on me the way I crushed on her, but I don't know. I have no idea what she thought about me. But so that's sort of where that song comes from. And the thing that was really interesting to me in the making, when I'm making this record, and I came to it with this set of songs. Not everything that I came to it with it made it into the album, and some of the things that I didn't intend to be on it are on it. And over time, it became clear to me that this was the thing, that I was going to tell this story, and that was the purpose that this album was going to serve. it's the only song that I ever wrote that was about suicide. As someone who spent the majority of 13 years really preoccupied with the idea. And, some of that goes back to what I was talking about last week with not being able to write a lyric into the song Falling Apart about wanting to get high because of how other people would perceive that lyric. And it's not something that, if you're of that mindset, when I was of that mindset, it was really embarrassing to me. I was really ashamed that I was so miserable and had such a hard time with life that I wanted it to be over. So we don't, as a society, we don't encourage people to experience their emotions and communicate them, which isolates people further and opens them up to avenues of more harm, either from other people because they've made themselves vulnerable or from themselves because they have made themselves vulnerable. And we as a society have encouraged that. So, going back to being in that psychiatric unit, it became clear to me that level of discomfort with existence was an illness of a spiritual nature. I don't think there's, I have moments where I remember something embarrassing or I'm just having a tough day, and I remember that I don't have to be here, right? It's still an option, but it is not the preoccupying notion that it once was. And I think that the way it enters into my mind today is a product of just 13 straight years of really consistent, hard programming of this idea into my brain. I don't think it comes from a place of sincere desire or actual thorough contemplation. It's the remnant of an old idea. When the idea does occur to me, it's because it's so deep in there for so long. But the thing that occurred to me in that psychiatric unit is like, that's not a thing that if you're spiritually healthy that you experience, really. I don't think that a spiritually healthy person is preoccupied with ending their life. And so I had to accept that there was a problem. And it wasn't purely one thing or another. It wasn't purely emotional. It wasn't purely psychiatric. It wasn't purely neurobiological. I would have very much appreciated if any of those things were true and there was some kind of quick, easy fix for it. But, I determined that I had to address deeper causes, and the deeper causes, the deeper issue in play was like this extreme discomfort with being alive, this extreme discomfort with waking up in the morning, this extreme discomfort with being a human being that had relationships with other human beings, and those relationships demanded certain things. They demanded responsibility and accountability and a certain commitment to honesty and open-mindedness and willingness, a certain commitment to justice and brotherly love. These things are required of me as a human being to relate to other human beings, at least in the bare minimum sense possible, just to get from, just to interact with the cashier, just to, get food from a restaurant. Like, these things are, and those, it was just so uncomfortable to be expected to have some grasp on these things when I felt so desperate to get away from everything on the inside. So I resolved to take an approach to addressing that issue that had been successful for a lot of other people, and that was the 12-step approach. So today's accomplishment of 5 years of continuous abstinence from mind and mood altering substances, today's accomplishment of having an album available for download or streaming or purchase in a bunch of different stores. Pretty much wherever you get your music from, you're going to be able to engage with this material. This is not my accomplishment. I have such a debt of gratitude to so many people. To my parents, who never gave up on me. To all of the people that I encountered in any meeting of any 12-step group that I ever attended. To anyone who was kind to me along the way. And to the people who weren't kind for teaching me that I didn't need them to be kind in order to survive. To the people who took the time to get to know me, to the extent that I would allow that to happen, and to offer me friendship, to the people who loved me, to the people who then decided that that was maybe a mistake. I could not be where I am today without every single person who played their part. And if there's just one thing that is especially important for me to get across in this video, is that you are not alone. You're not the only person who feels these things. There is a way of getting better. It's not fun. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And there are so many people who will help you do it. And I would list some of them, but I don't want to exclude anyone, and I certainly don't want to embarrass anyone or, put their stuff out there, by virtue of the fact that they are somehow connected to me. So I will just leave it at thank you, everyone. You can go listen to the album now if you haven't already, if you want to. You can hear the incredible two thank yous that I will absolutely insist on is Barry McGuire and Tim Ferguson over at Swayze Sound Design, who made this record possible through their amazing talent and collaboration. Everyone who took time to hang out in the studio while we were doing that, Laura Kellogg, Chris Matthews, Pete Godanis, and Amanda Wilkie especially. So go check out the work that was put in. It's really excellent. The finished product has these guys blew me away with what they were able to do with the material that I gave them. So thanks everyone for being here. Miracles do happen, and they are possible for you too. And if there is any way in which I can help facilitate your understanding of that or your implementation of that in your own life, please, please, please let me know. I would be only too happy to talk to you about anything that I can help you with. So thank you all. God bless you all. Go check out the album. And come back next week, because we're going to talk about Going Nowhere and the story of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle marijuana pipe, which is a really great, fun story. So come back next week for that. Thank you again. God bless you again. I love you. And be safe. Bye.